bring my laptop just for safety. Feel free to see because the camera rotates. So
Come sit on the other side. We need a balance here.
me too. On the other side? No, not me.
No, whatever you want. I mean, feel comfortable.
My laptop and then.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I can say I'm super, super happy. And I think you can see it also in the faces of our colleagues that we have so many young people here. We are a trade union. And I think when everyone is thinking about trade union, the first image that you have in your head is not only so many young people, but a bit different sometimes. So that's what we are super happy to have so many young people here today. I am Mateusz van Rejewski from CSE Youth, and CSE Youth was installed like 10 years ago when youth unemployment was on a very, very high peak in the European Union, 2013. And since then, we are tackling more and more youth topics. And today we are here also to discuss this very important youth topic. And that's why we are also super happy to have here today representatives also from the European Commission, the European Parliament, and our friends and good partners in cooperation already since some years, like StartNet, the European Youth Forum. And yeah, so that's super nice. But the topic we are discussing today here is not only so nice, to be honest, because we are speaking about the issue of internships and mostly about the framework of internships, of how it is handled. So the question is, who of you all have ever worked for free? Just raise your hand and keep it raised. And then tell me who of you have done an internship? Is it the same people? Do you feel a little connection there between the unpaid and the internship? That's exactly what we want to also discuss today. So internships, as we all know, and I was speaking already here in our lunch event with some of you. So you are also interns. So you know the experience first on your first hand that it's a super important period in your life when you have the transition from school to work. It's about integrating young people into the labor market, and we know that there's a big skills mismatch, and that's why internships are so important, and they have to be regulated, they have to work well, that the transition from school to the labor market will work. But sadly, also the day-to-day life of an internship is not as nice as we all could wish. It's that only 40% of interns in the European Union are paid, and only half of them anyhow have a decent pay. So it means that 4 out of 5 interns really don't get enough money to survive anyhow, which means also that internships become something exclusive only for the ones who really have the money, who have the family background to be able to finance their life. Furthermore, we have a lack of social security coverage and of health coverage. And it means that there's safety risk as well as little or no remuneration, as we said. And also we have to say that only in 13 out of 27 member states, there's a regulation that there has to be a written agreement. for internships. That means that half of the European Union countries, they don't have any written agreement, which is essential because you as interns have to know what are your rights, what are your responsibilities, and also to be able to claim for something. And the other thing is also that interns, as they are very young and very new in the labor market, are a vulnerable group who are kind of feared also to self-defend them because they are very young and unexperienced. And that's why we need to have joint forces with a lot of other organizations in order to fight for your and the other colleagues' rights who will be interns one day in the future as well. So I would now open the event. It's a lunch event, as we said. We already had the lunch, so we will start now with some discussions today. It's just feel free. We have a little bit of a set agenda, but I think we are really flexible also. So whenever you have questions, just raise your hands, interrupt, jump. I'm also happy if some of you will share some of your experiences. I could already hear in the lunch break a little bit of some dramatic stories, which are sadly reality. But before handing to Christian Villa from the European Parliament, I would firstly introduce also our Secretary General, Klaus Heger. He was online. Ah, there he is. Klaus, you also wanted to say a few words.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, welcome. I was down with you. I think it's wonderful that so many, as you said, Matteo, so many young faces are gathered in our office, and I'm really inviting all the others also who usually join us online. This refers to both the Brussels bubble, but also, let's say, our members. I hope you're enjoying staying with us. I think it's so much nicer when we can meet in person. And I'm also very happy to see Claudia, for instance, joining us online. Claudia, you missed the opportunity to be with us. Anyway, I wish you a wonderful meeting about a subject, Matteo, as you mentioned, is a serious one. And I think, and we will hear certainly something from the lady from the European Commission also, I hope that the Commission now is reacting to the Parliament's serve, and we will hear more about it today, I'm sure. Have a good meeting, and great that you're with us, both online and in our conference room. And I hope the sandwiches were okay, more or less.
Thank you, Klaus. Maybe why Klaus mentioned Claudia, you can see her online. Maybe Claudia, you can wave your hand for a second. Claudia was our intern some years ago. And she, as you can see, she's now working in the European Youth Forum in the Department of Employment and Social Inclusion, which means that her transition from school, university into the labor market worked very well. So we are happy, and we are happy to have you still in our Brussels bubble and to keep a good cooperation with you. But anyway, I want to give now the floor to Christian Villa, who is working for Alice Holmes, who is shadow rapporteur of the Quality Traineeship framework. And you want to introduce to us a little bit the European Parliament's report. So the floor is yours, Christian.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me. And though I know that you would expect Alicia to be here, but apologies on her behalf. But that the agendas of the members are a bit hectic sometimes. And it's also very nice to see so many familiar faces here in this meeting. Also, Claudia, because we worked a lot together during the last months, on this own initiative report of the Parliament. So okay, well, I was asked to to make a brief introduction about the INL that was adopted by the European Parliament around 2 weeks ago, I would say, in the plenary in June. Well, as you know, this fight on unpaid internships has been on the table during this whole mandate. Actually, the European Parliament has recognized up to 5 times during this mandate that unpaid internships are a form of exploitation of young workers and also a violation of their rights. In addition, we have also called for a common legal framework to guarantee their fair remuneration. So that's basically the reason why this INL was proposed at coordinators level to be adopted in this mandate. So just to give you some figures, the latest Eurobarometer shows that only 55% of trainees receive some kind of economic compensation. Only 33% have full social coverage. And also, according to a very good research published by the European Youth Forum, we know that the basic living costs on average required to undertake an unpaid internship in Europe are at least 1,028 euros per month. So, based on that, we can ask ourselves, what's the future for the new generations then? Exploitation and their use of cheap labor before being able to emancipate themselves already in their 30s, because that's the main problem that we see, especially in southern countries as Spain. I have well, even myself, I did 4 traineeships. I was very lucky because I came to Brussels in 2018 as a trainee. My first year here was as a trainee, but I was lucky enough to transition and from this traineeship bubble to the labor market. I'm now working for an MEP, but it's true that so many of my friends are still trapped in this vicious circle, or in precarious jobs basically. And the most important thing here is to provide people with decent working conditions that allow them to make ends meet basically. So concerning the report of the Parliament, basically what we have done is this is an INL. So the structures of INLs are as follows: you have a political resolution, and then you have some annexes in which we propose some legislation to the European Commission in this case. Here we decided to present 2 different annexes. On the one hand, a directive that would be based on Article 153 of the TFEU. Then this directive would cover trainees in the open labor markets. So this would, all trainees, after their studies would be included here. Open labor market, also those traineeships related to active labor market policies as the youth guarantee, and also traineeships that are mandatory part of professional training. And we were thinking here about psychologists, for example, or lawyers that need to do some kind of mandatory training before become professionally independent, let's say. And on the other hand, we have a decision which cover traineeships undertaking with the aim of obtaining educational qualifications. So those would be the trainees, who do this experience while they are still studying at university, for example. And in this case, we based our decision on Article 166 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. We at the Parliament, we are saying that despite of I have to say that it was a very difficult negotiation. It was very long. It was very tough because we were quite divided. But in the end, despite the attempts of the conservatives and especially of the far right in the European Parliament to prevent any kind of binding instruments, we managed to keep our promise to young Europeans. And we can say now that we are maybe a step closer to banning unpaid internships in the EU, because even if the word ban doesn't appear in the text, of course, because that would be legally wouldn't be possible. The fact that we are guaranteeing decent working conditions for those trainees, we have to take into account that all the youth organizations, civil society, trade unions, this issue on precarious working conditions when doing traineeship was the top priority, for example, at the conference on the future of Europe. So we try to follow those demands and try to keep our promise to them, because in the end we cannot forget that young people are the ones that believe the most in the European project. So especially in a time when far right is getting stronger, we cannot take the risk of losing all young people just because we are not able to deliver. I think we already adopted many impactful legislation during this mandate, very different legislation to the one that we adopted during the financial crisis. And we can think about the minimum wage directive, or also the fact that we have dedicated the European Year of Youth, 2022 as the European Year of Youth, also 2023 as the European Year of Skills. I think it's very important, and it gives the idea that we are committed to the cause of youth. So basically based on our approach that traineeships must be fair and transparent, but most importantly they must be for everyone, of course regardless their socioeconomic background. We decided to draft this report, as I told with the structuring in two different parts, but with the same objective, that is at least to ensure decent remuneration in all traineeships, in all kind of traineeships. So consequently, what we are calling is trainees to be treated as workers, and among other things, this would mean greeting agreements with decent working conditions. Also for those traineeships, for the curricular traineeships, I would say adequate compensation in line with the cost of living of the country. This compensation could be financial or in kind to cover at least basic living necessities such as food, accommodation, transport. For those traineeships, for the extracurricular traineeships, we are calling a remuneration in line with minimum wage directive. Also, we are calling on access to social protection, and here we state clearly pension rights, health insurance, unemployment benefits, and paid leave as well. Also, we would like to see traineeships recognized as work experience in recruitment process. I think this is very important, especially when we don't do just one traineeship for 6 months. In my case, for example, I did 4 traineeships, is like 2 years of experience, and it's not recognized anywhere. So I think it's very important. Also, we would like to see that traineeships are limited in time. The duration must be limited to avoid, of course, that any prolongation or renewal of those traineeships result in replacement of structural jobs or junior positions. And we would like to set as well, very clear training and learning objectives. Another thing also that was quite difficult to include on the text was also the access of traineeships, all of them, both curricular and extracurricular, to have access to trade unions or to workers' representatives. This was quite difficult to include on the text, but in the end, it's on our proposal. So we are very happy to see that Commissioner Schmidt, because of course we have talked a lot with him and also with his cabinet, with Santina as well. And we are very glad to see that he's fully committed with this proposal. We know that after the Parliament's call for the new law, the Commission will launch consultation with social partners very soon. So actually I think that we are all looking forward to hear what's the state of play at Commission level, because everybody knows what's what the Parliament is asking. Everything is public. I can send you, of course, the report, the resolution that was adopted. But here the big question is what's the Commission is gonna propose, when it's gonna propose it, and how social partners are gonna behave on this, because we know that trade unions are quite committed, but of course we had several meetings with some employers organizations, and SMEs, both at European and Spanish level, and we know that they are a bit more reluctant or a bit more, worried. So it will be very nice to see, what they are gonna propose on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. So I see it's getting a hot table here of discussions, but we all are curious about the Commission's response, and you would be now normally the next one. But I have to say that we have to change the agenda for a second, because Claudia would step in now. She has to leave a bit earlier, so that's why Claudia would be the next one. But I just wanted to comment on what you said. Two things. Firstly, I'm super happy to hear that you also asked for remuneration, and at least in the level of minimum wage. Also speaking about recognizing internships as working experience is something very, very important. I believe on the other side, I have a very sad response to what you said, that our generation is the one most pro-European. I was just reading the last days a German studies from a research paper from TUI, which is normally a travel company that's known in the Netherlands as Arke or something. And they have always like big youth studies as well. And they had 2018 a study on how young Germans feel pro-European. And the response was that 80% of Germans feel very much pro-European. And last year it was 67. So in 4 years, 13% felt less pro-European. So we see that on this level, we really have to act more for young people to protect them. Anyway, so now I would hand over to Claudia. You have been quoted today already several times and mentioned. And so now I'm happy that you want to introduce to us the European Youth Forum's position on the traineeships.
Hello, thank you for having me, and thanks for the invite and for organizing this event. Yeah, I'm sorry that I have to leave a bit earlier, and thank you for your understanding with me hijacking the agenda. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I'm Claudia, and I work at the European Youth Forum on social and economic inclusion. And there I work on the topic of transitions from education to the labor market. So a big portion of my time is dedicated to our unpaid internships campaign. Now, I would feel very, I don't know, like I hope that everyone in the room has heard of our campaign to ban unpaid internships in Europe. But maybe for those of you who are not so familiar, I will maybe just explain a bit the background and the context. So the topic of internships has always been a priority for the European Youth Forum. And we already in 2017 launched a complaint towards the European Committee of Social Rights, which is a body of the Council of Europe, against Belgium, on the grounds that Belgium basically was not doing enough to protect the rights of interns in the labor market. So in the beginning of 2022, we got the outcome of this collective complaint, which indeed said that there were some violations of the rights of the interns in the Belgian labor market, and they needed to do more to protect interns, for example, having more labor inspectorates. At the same time, in 2022, the European Commission started the review of the quality framework for traineeships, which I'm sure Shui Bin will know more about. So the quality framework for traineeships is a council recommendation from 2014. And unfortunately, it's not a binding document, so it's not mandatory for the member states to implement. And it does not include principles on access to remuneration and access to social protection. So also in the spirit of the European Year of Youth, the Youth Forum launched this campaign called Can You Afford to Work for Free in the beginning of 2022. And this name is precisely because unpaid internships are an unfair practice which discriminate against those who come from a lower socioeconomic background, so who can and who cannot afford to work for free. On these grounds, we launched a petition calling for a European directive which ensures access to remuneration for trainees in the labor market. We actually just closed our petition last week. And we had the privilege to interview Commissioner Nicolas Schmit to celebrate this closing of the petition and to give him the signatures that we collected over last year. So within the campaign, that's the main demand of the European Youth Forum, because yeah, we witnessed that those who come from marginalized background, for example, are 8 times less likely to access this type of work placements than those coming from a higher socio and economic background. So this is promoting inequalities in the labor market, and that's why we have to tackle it, because young people are already overrepresented in precarious employments, are another type of precarious employment contract. So through our campaign, we have been in touch both with the different European institutions, and we thank them for the cooperation and for the collaboration. And of course, we were very happy to see that the Parliament also called for a directive to ensure remuneration for trainees in the labor market. And like Christian said, we are also waiting to see what is going to be the proposal that the European Commission will publish. And we are here to continue collaborating and working together with all of the stakeholders. And yeah, I mean, those are my 2 cents. Thank you for having me. And yeah, let's ensure that every young person has a better outlook in the labor market than what they have now. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, for introducing the YFJ's position and also your campaign, which was really big in the past time. I remember I could also participate. It was a great thingy. Thank you very much. So now, I mean, I think there's so much pressure created on you, Shulbeam. I'm very sorry. You have to tell us all the commission secrets. So the floor is yours. I think we all can't wait.
Sorry, we cannot hear anything here.
No.
I'm sorry. In the commission, actually, when it's red, then it's on. Everything the opposite, right? In the commission? No. I was just thanking Stacey, first of all, for organizing this event and for having me here. And thank you for the previous speakers for their actually well-known points. We have heard you loud and clear, and Claudia, don't worry, we are very much aware of your campaign, because you started your first sentence, I would really be, and then you didn't finish your sentence, but I think you wanted to say, I would be really disappointed if there were people still here in the room not aware of the ban unpaid traineeships or internships, I think you say, campaign. No, we are well aware. And I think, there is no one in the room who would disagree with the fact that unpaid traineeships are just something that is unacceptable and should definitely not be promoted or supported. So that's definitely not the issue. But maybe before going into the substance, a bit more about the context of the commission and the way we have been working until now. I work in the unit that deals with youth employment. So I know that youth employment has been on the agenda, high on the agenda of the Commission for some time, and this has not changed and will not change in the near future, because we saw the impact that COVID has had. We saw clearly peaks during those years in youth unemployment rates and also the NEETs rates. So NEETs are the not in education and training and also not in employment young people. Luckily, recently, the figures show that we are more or less back to the pre-COVID pandemic levels, but who knows what's going to happen from now onwards because of the uncertainties that everyone is facing, but especially young people with the Russian invasion into the Ukraine. We cannot, we cannot relax and let go. I think more the opposite. When we talk about youth employment, first of all, we have our cornerstone in terms of EU policy, which is the Youth Guarantee. Perhaps you have heard of it. It exists already since 2013. And then when COVID happened, we reinforced it in 2020 as part of a larger package on support for youth employment. The other elements were more focused on vocational education and training, as well as apprenticeships. But quality traineeships are also a very important element in supporting young people making the first steps towards the labor market. And that all sounds probably quite familiar to you, but I've also been there. I'm a bit older than most of you here, but my very first step into the labor market was also a traineeship. And just as a personal note, I am from what they call in EU jargon, I'm a person with a migrant background, and my parents, perhaps you could say, from a socioeconomic disadvantage background, and I was a person that could not have afforded taking up an unpaid traineeship. So my traineeship, luckily, was a paid one. It was at the Commission. Yeah, I had no complaints, but I also knew that had I not had this opportunity, I would have been maybe in another place. So it's well noted what you have just said, Christian, and also Claudia. So indeed, we took upon us to evaluate what is currently in place, and that is this Council recommendation on a quality framework for traineeships. It was adopted in 2014, so quite old, which is exactly why we did an evaluation to see also whether it's still up to date or not, because the world has changed, not just what I just mentioned with Russia and the war, but also larger trends such as the digital transition, the green transition, as well as, and that's due to the COVID pandemic, of course, that this practice of working from home has picked up and changed for many organizations, the way of working. And what does that mean? First of all, in terms of working for everyone, but also for traineeships specifically. The evaluation found indeed that traineeships are an important way still for young people to enter the labor market. We also did a Eurobarometer survey recently with a focus on traineeships. There it was also confirmed that today still for young people, traineeships are very important as a first step. Maybe to give you some figures, for almost 20% of the respondents, the traineeship was the first work experience in their young career. And almost 80% did at least one, and even half of the respondents did more than one traineeship. And we just heard some people even do 4. That's amazing. In terms of outcome and usefulness of traineeships, quite good results. 7 in 10 young persons having done a traineeship, they found a job after the traineeship. And 40% actually found a job with the same employer where they did the traineeship. But not all was rosy, of course, and the evaluation already showed this in its findings, but also the survey that I just mentioned. There are areas where we need to work on, which is exactly why this resolution of the Parliament comes very timely, because it's another source of input. And of course, we have had consultations with other stakeholders, including social partners, but also the Youth Forum. And all of this feedback will feed into the new initiative on quality traineeships. Maybe to mention a few elements that we are definitely looking at. We already announced in our Commission Work Program 2023 that we would update the old instrument, addressing also issues as remuneration and social protection. So that's not it shouldn't be a surprise. Other issues to be addressed in the new instrument or strengthened in the new instrument, they are very much in line with what the Parliament has called for in its resolution. And these are addressing the poor working conditions more generally, so not just looking at remuneration and social protection, but also addressing sometimes there's a lack of transparency. So that means as a young person, when you look for your for your first job and it's a traineeship vacancy, do you know what you sign up for? Is it clear to you? Or do you find out on your first day? Then it might be too late because you're in a precarious situation where maybe you really, really need this job. And then maybe only, when signing on your first day, you're told certain conditions to which you might not be agreeing. This is not okay. You should be well informed before you make this decision and know what you can expect. I think it was Christian who already mentioned that sometimes employers, they use traineeships and they call certain contracts traineeships, whereas actually this person is hired to do the same job under the same conditions as any of his or her colleagues sitting next to him or her, but receiving less pay, less protection, basically saying, okay, I call you a trainee just because you're cheaper. What we call this bogus traineeships, and these are traineeships that actually replace regular employment. Inclusiveness, it has already been mentioned by the previous speakers. You have a sense of awareness. Are young people sufficiently aware of traineeship opportunities? And this is very much linked to outreach by employers to certain groups in societies. And I'm talking about young people from a migrant background, young people from a disadvantaged economic social background, young people with disabilities, maybe also young people who live further away in rural areas. In the evaluation, it came up that these groups are less represented. They are facing certain barriers to do with outreach, but this is also linked, and this has been said already before, this is also linked to pay. And I just gave you the example of myself. There are some groups of people in society who can't do a job, obviously, without any income because they don't have the support network that other people might have, or are a bit more fortunate. Other findings, yes, post-placement support. The survey surprisingly showed quite a high percentage of trainees receiving post-placement support, and this is support from the employer, that is providing a traineeship to the trainee in order to find the next opportunity once the traineeship is over. And this can be opening up the network to a trainee, but also counseling or advice. But this was one of the things lacking in the current framework. Mentoring as well. The current framework speaks about supervisor. Well, yeah, supervisor is not the same as having a mentor. That's clear. A supervisor will oversee your work and assess how you perform your tasks, whereas a mentor should be more of a coach, maybe related to your tasks, but not necessarily only related to that. So that's another thing. Remote work, I've already mentioned. We need to look into what this means for traineeships and whether there's a need for the new instrument to also foresee some quality parameters on this. Recognition and validation of the skills that you acquire during your traineeship, it has already been mentioned, and cross-border traineeships. So doing a traineeship in another member state than where you are. This is increasing. It's being picked up more and more. But here again, there's a link with remuneration, or at least having the financial means to do so, because no matter how you want to look at it, but it's expensive to do a traineeship abroad. So in short, I think I would say that, the bottom line is that we have shared objectives. We want to help young people in ensuring quality traineeships. We want to support young people in the transition to the labor market. And in doing so, we hear the call for a binding instrument. The Commission actually has replied to the Parliament's resolution last week by a letter. This is a formality. It's always done like this. Our President has always said that we are committed to respond to each and every single own initiative resolution by the Parliament. So our intent is indeed to respond by a proposal for a legislative instrument. But it has to, obviously, it sounds a bit obvious, but still it needs to be said. This legislative instrument, of course, needs to be respectful to the limits of the treaty. We need to operate within the boundaries of the treaty in terms of subsidiarity, proportionality, and better lawmaking principles. We need to consult social partners to this aim, and indeed, Christian already mentioned, this is our first step. It's already in the pipeline, and the first stage consultation phase should be launched in the coming days. I don't have an exact date yet, but it's really a matter of days. And then depending on what we gather as feedback from the social partners, on the options for the new instruments, this will also determine a little bit the timeline for the new proposal. These consultation steps, they take time. For example, the first stage consultation phase, we try to give the social partners as much time as possible because we're covering the summer period as well. This is just a very practical point, but social partners, their organizations, their members, they also go on holidays, and they need to coordinate. So this will already take us to September. Then we will gather the feedback internally, we will analyze it, and then we will launch a second stage for social partners consultation. This is a minimum, and this is in the treaty, a minimum of 6 weeks again of consultation. So where are we then? We're October, November, just for consultations. So just to temper a little bit the expectations in terms of timeline, and these are steps that we really need to do. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Shulbim. Yes, thank you for also some good news. You dropped some good news to us, so I'm happy to hear about that you will tackle furthermore the issue of remuneration, but also the big point that we also stated in the survey that was made 2 years ago by ECHO, we spoke before, that we also were speaking about the supervising or the mentoring, that there's a difference, and then happy to see that this will also be in this new framework. We have good news because Raluca just checked, and honestly, we got just now the consultation. So it's she thinks so.
No, that cannot be.
That cannot be.
No.
So maybe
It's
we have
something
fake
else.
news here. I'm
No,
sorry.
It's a survey. It's a
Survey is
survey
possible,
link.
yes.
Yes. So today.
So there's a survey and not yet a social partner consultation.
I didn't mention. I didn't mention this, but we have another study ongoing also on traineeships that will feed into the new initiative as well. And in the context of that study, there's a survey also to social partners. This is in addition to the formal consultation, which is more treaty related.
Okay, great. So thank you for clarification. We will ensure to answer both, definitely, and also with collecting some of the input of this today's event. So thank you very much for the input. Now let's have a look a little bit more on the practical sides also of this aspects of traineeships. And I would hand over to Jan from StartNet. Maybe you can say a few words firstly about StartNet, what it is, because I'm pretty sure you are all curious also about the transition from school to work.
Thank you, Matthias. Thanks, everyone. So indeed, StartNet is a project on young people's transition into the labor market, school to work transition of the Goethe-Institut and Stiftung Mercator since 2017. We are connecting 18 educational projects, initiatives, stakeholders from 12 countries, building together good practices, exchanging them, creating partnerships. And so we for sure can share what has been said on this transition to the labor market as the most crucial, but also the most vulnerable moment for young people. It's this moment when you lose your networks, your support that you were used to at the education system. You want to go to the labor market, but suddenly, there are other people that are in charge. You can't rely on your previous networks, etc. So it's a very difficult moment, but a very decisive, because if you manage your first transition to the labor market, most often you're fine, you will always bounce back and change jobs, but you need this first experience to really transform your skills that you acquired, your education into concrete jobs. We believe that all forms of work-based learning are highly valuable in this regard. So we realize that, of course, technologies, everything moves forward quickly. The labor market and education is a bit lacking behind. I guess everyone is a testimony of that. So whatever you can bring in as concrete practical experience, it's really super helpful, because this is what is building the bridge then to enter the labor market, whether it's an internship, whether it's an apprenticeship, whether it is a dual studies, etc. Super important. But I think the topic of internships and traineeships is really the most burning. It was mentioned how passionate young people are about it, and how it's maybe also an indicator of what doesn't work in the labor market for young people. So in an ideal world, an internship, it will be good for everyone. It will be good for the intern. You can acquire the skills you need for certain jobs. You can build your network. You understand the field. You're entering better. You're building your own confidence, and really growing your employment prospects. And for the employer, it's fantastic. You can ease your recruitment. You can test some young people that might join your company. You have maybe a shortage on some fields. You recruit an intern that has specific knowledge, whether it's about communication, whatever field you need to boost. It's of course more flexible, more cost effective than maybe other solutions. You get employees that are very loyal to your company, and it's nice for your image. You can show off that you are a social caring company. So no one of these arguments is neglected. Unfortunately, that is not always the reality. I just out of curiosity was checking a bit the statistics of the Blue Book internships at the European Commission, and I was impressed that only 5% of applicants they are selected. So it's a huge demand. It just shows how few quality internships are out there for young people in Europe, and how desperate many become to go for this one. That is an excellent choice, but it also shows that there maybe are some lacking alternatives. I was surprised to see that over 50% of the applicants, it was an average over the last 5 years, are over 30. So it's a lot of young people who might have had other internships before, who did their second, maybe third studies and try again. And in some years, a quarter of the applicants came from Italy, followed by Spain. So it shows the huge discrepancies in labor markets. So certain labor markets just don't deliver for young people. And that's why you have to go to the European level. So it really shows the need for regulation in this domain to create better conditions all across Europe. It shows how these practical experience internships can become a win-win for all sides, but that it really needs, of course, that certain criteria are respected, but maybe more than everything also a cultural shift, that also the employer side, they see themselves also as an education provider, because that is what they are. When we are talking lifelong learning, I think it's about the schools, the universities, but you should never stop learning. And if you're an employer, you should always have a workforce that keeps learning, starting from the intern, but up to senior staff. So I think, we really are delighted about this change that I think is one cornerstone in the transition to the labor market. But as the statistics show, it also is a little bit an indicator of so many things that don't work for young people. And so we are talking social protection more broadly, the lack of alternative jobs for young people, entry-level jobs, etc., etc. But I think this process that we are testimonying here is super important, and I'm even more delighted because it's the result of such a consultation process of the Conference on the Future of Europe, of the European Years on Youth and Skills. It really shows, okay, there has been some listening, and hopefully there will be delivery on that, and one important stepping stone to help young people's transition in the labor market across Europe.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for this perspective. I was just looking out of curiosity how much the Commission is paying for the Blue Book internships. What do you think? Does someone have the number in head? 1,000? How much? 300? Yes, since this year, 1,300. And we heard from the youth forums. No, it's 1,300 euro for the Blue Book internship. And we heard from the youth forums survey that the average spendings of an intern is in EU-wide 1,028. So I mean, in Brussels, as you are based here now, you know that it's not the cheapest place on this continent. So 1,300 is not so much really to survive as a good internship, but still it's better than having nothing or even having less. Speaking about having less, and also speaking about having really a tough years for young people, I would like to switch now to my colleagues from Hungary. I think we all know what is happening there, but we have here some first-hand experiences who my colleague Robert wants to share with us. So Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mateusz. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see you. It's really nice to see this a lot of many young faces. I'm Robert Szokolai. I'm the vice representative of CESI Youth. I'm the president of MKKS Youth, and I'm the head of the MKKS National Office. MKKS is probably the biggest trade union in Hungary in public sector. I come from Hungary, as you heard, which perhaps says you a lot. And precisely because I come from Hungary, it's really hard to pick up just one topic, which is affects young people badly, since we are currently suffering from countless things in our country. But today, we are here to talk about the pledge for fair working conditions for young people. But there are many shaded sides to this, and I have been very lucky the last week, and I have the opportunity to talk with several people about these topics and all the shaded sides. But among these, I would like to highlight those that work extremely poorly in Hungary. So I'm here to talk about the Hungarian reality, basically. For example, my favorite topic is young workers and trainers are not slaves. And yes, I'm using this word because there are places where young people are treated that way, like slaves. And please, let's not forget that human rights and good treatment also apply to young people. Just because you are young and employed, you are still considered an equal person. And that's why you don't have to do the humiliating tasks and you don't have to say yes to everything. And we hear more and more these days that no is a complete sentence, and this is true. But in our case, I would rather simply say that you are free to say no. And it's totally okay to say no. The other, and this is maybe the most favorite topic of mine, the ability to disconnect. This does not work at all in Hungary, especially not among young people. You must be reachable to the boss after the working hours, during the night, during the weeks, always. And if you are not, the punishment will follow you in the next day. And it's a big no, it's a red flag, and it's totally not okay. If you can't disconnect, it affects your salary and it affects your mental health. Your salary, because it's getting less by less with every extra unpaid hour. And this is the truth. I recommend that you follow Laura Whaley on TikTok, who covers exactly this topic in her videos. She says that working only 8 hours for 8 hours pay is not a sin. It's totally natural. And she explains, for example, it is not a sin to disconnect at the end of your day because you are done with your paid hours. It is natural. It's not a sin. She also says, which I said, the unpaid work hours are only earned less by less. In this case, she also jokingly points out the great truth in one of her videos that the salary of her non-stop working boss is practically worth less than her because her boss is working non-stop and the money just go down. And yes, the not being able to disconnect has the biggest impact on your mental health because there is a big need for recharge, privacy, and life balance. However, what is necessary for this everything? And here we get to the point, which I'm never afraid to say: money, money, and more money. Money for young people, yes, because currently in many countries, not only in Hungary, young people's wages are kept so low that they have no vision for the future. For our generation, having a house is just a disappointed dream, impossible to reach. Or poorer places, also a car, a holiday, or savings, also impossible. And talking about having less and having a conversation about Hungary, sometimes it's impossible to learn because you will pay off student loans practically for the end of your life. And you can't get out the circle if you are not come from a rich family, as I can't get out my circle. So, in summary, what can I say? We, youth, ask for equal and human treatment, fair salary, and opportunities. And please, Let's drop the sentences like today's youth and in our times. None of it is true. We are not asking for free money without working, and we are not lazy or stupid. It's exactly opposite. We are highly qualified, ambitious, awakened society who wants to break out the roles forced on them and demand what is right for them. We want to work for a fair wage among human conditions. We want a future that we are ready to work for. However, until some governments can't basically just take our future and throw it in the trash, we have to fight, and we have to keep fighting. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for sharing these personal experiences of many young people in Hungary. Maybe you could also just say a few words. I know we are hard on time, but I mean, you might think, okay, I mean, there are trade unions in Hungary, why they don't do nothing and so on. Maybe you can say something about like the new law about striking and demonstrations.
Yeah, of course I can. There is a new, not the newest law about the having the right for striking in Hungary, because I can't say we don't have the right. We have the right to having a strike, but there is a thing which is called the minimum percentage of work during the strike, and this is 100%. So during we are having a strike, we have to work full time. So it's not a strike. And we just talked about it last week. We are having demonstrations, but the government says demonstration and strike is not the same. Demonstration is just marching without a goal. So we are out of the streets. We have thousands of members, but it is not a strike. It's just marching without goal. So yeah, we try to strike, but if there is no law to strike, what can you do? And talking about laws and new laws, just one more sentence. We have this newest law. It's called status law. It's for teachers, and it's working from 3 days. It says basically just the basic points. Government can check the teachers' phones and laptops. Teachers have to sign new contracts, and they can't say negative things about the government. They have to teach about the new books, and it is true when I say to you, we having new books. It's like just you know, the person Kim Jong-un. We are deleting words from the books, and once you don't know anymore the meaning of a word, you can't complain about that. And I really think so that Hungary is going in a way that maybe in a future there won't be a word for freedom, and our children won't know the word and the meaning, and they can't complain about it. So we have very bad new laws and things going in Hungary, but we are keep fighting. Thank you.
Thank you. And fighting under this like really cut conditions is not easy at all. As we are already now really run of time, and we are already late, very late, but I think we had super interesting inputs. I would still open the floor to discussions a little bit if someone has some questions or some input or wants to share some personal experiences also, as I know that there are a few of you interns still here. So that's now the momentum. The commission is listening here as well, and can take maybe some insights as well. So someone wants to share something, come on.
Thank you so much for the intervention and for the commitments, both from civil societies and the institutions. I'm Sara Secchi and I work for Don Bosco International. It's an advocacy organization that represents the solution of Don Bosco in the EU. I'm wondering, it will take time to finalize this legal process. So in the short time, like these years, it cannot maybe be useful to increase the funds for Erasmus Traineeship or European Solidarity Corps in a way in which we facilitate the school to work transition through European scholarships. Because this was my story, for example, my family couldn't afford me like to have an experience abroad, and my experience abroad funded by the EU funds was more accessible for me than experience in Italy, according to traineeship. So maybe it can be one of the tools that can make traineeship fair and accessible, especially when it comes to civil society organization that maybe are small, but can still provide quality traineeship. It's a way to facilitate it, to support them. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting idea. And I know that there are funds already mobilized to also support traineeships. When you say more funds on the short run, I there are certain procedures also related to the allocation of funds and what member states need to do in the process in order to get those funds. They are maybe not so short as we would like to, and we are, this is now July, end of the year. Many of the allocations, at least they are already kind of how to say discussed and agreed. So to now in the short run top up in relation to certain topics such as traineeships, I think it would not be so easy. But in all transparency, I'm myself not directly dealing with funds and not in negotiations with member states on these allocations. So I am not completely 100% sure of the timelines needed for this. But in my understanding, many of the allocations are more or less settled. But yeah, it's something worth raising for sure to see what is still possible. We always have pockets here and there that are not yet fixed. So, but I don't know enough about the procedures to give you a definite answer, but thank you for the idea.
Thank you. Anyone else? Some questions or comments?
Thank you. I'm from Italy and I did so many traineeship. I'm doing a traineeship, so I know that there are so many competition, and I'm a little bit wondering that, I want to ask you to put attention on the fact that that could be a risk to become a privilege just to be a trainee if the traineeship become a paid traineeship, because sometimes for this competition, sometimes the risk is that only people from determined school, from determined faculty or of background can have the access to the traineeship. So yes, to be careful to the access for everyone for the traineeship. Yes.
Thank you. That's also very important to consider. I would also have a question about the timing of the new quality framework. What do you think? I mean, we feel the pressure that this commission is ending in less than 11 months. And do you think it will be possible to be introduced before there is a new commission next year?
I cannot know. I cannot confirm, but it's something we are trying. yes, it's something in our own interest as well. But yeah, there's no way to commit to that because there are too many factors on which it depends, and not just social partners consultations, but it's also a factor. But also how internally it plays out in terms of deciding on the course of the instrument and what goes in, what doesn't go in, etc. But we are really doing our best. But indeed, like you say, there's not much time left.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no other comments, questions, I think we could come to an end. Thank you for this great. There is one. Yeah, sorry, I haven't seen. Marion Linga, yes? The
Yeah.
floor.
Sorry, yeah, I'm calling in online, so I'm not in the room. I have a rather like a rerouting question generically about internship and paid internship, because I'm not from the European Union, I'm not working there, I'm working for an NGO based in Vienna, Austria. And the struggles that we face here with internship is actually that the part that we are competing with for interns is basically international organizations, because Vienna is one of the international organization hubs. As you might know, there is a huge part of the UN and the IEA and so on based here. And they actually hire interns with no pay at all. And they hire them for as long as they want to. So what are actually the intentions? Are there any plans or any strategic thinking about reaching out to the international organizations to get them on board to finally change their perception to it? Because only changing the European Union, but not changing it also with international organizations, we might probably be a very separated like luxury post that is actually working towards paying interns, because not paying interns is basically modern slavery. But there will be no change somewhere else, and there will be no change, especially in all the cities that do host international organizations, and they do not actually refer to any laws that the European Union and their member states might have implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. That's a good point about international organizations not being binded to any EU law. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think this is a question that should be only addressed to the Commission or at EU level. I think that goes to all stakeholders, because we all have the obligation to advocate for these, for raising awareness on what should be fair working conditions for young people, not just trainees, but also for trainees, and fighting unfair practices. I think the most famous example is probably the UN in New York, where they are unpaid traineeships, and New York is not the most affordable city. So indeed, and then it ties into the privileged access. These are privileged traineeships that you can only do them when somehow either you have a scholarship somehow or a grant, or you are well off. That's the bottom line. It's true that the evaluation, and this I didn't mention before, also highlighted that there's a lack of awareness of what quality traineeships are. Everyone knows what traineeships are, but what a good traineeship should look like, even within the EU and employers working in the EU, and also young people themselves, trainees themselves, sometimes are not aware that there should be quality elements in a traineeship to make it a good traineeship. So in that sense, I support completely what you are saying, that we should spread the awareness at all levels and yeah, in all directions as far as possible, but together.
Thank you. And I mean, thinking about a bright future, if this quality framework will one be alive and with paid interns, then it means that these companies or NGOs that don't want to pay for their interns, they will get less applications maybe from young people, because there will be other companies who pay. So there's a higher competition. So if there is nothing else to add, I think the main takeaways of today's meeting are that we really have to talk about this topic and work on it. There's a time pressure, we can feel it. I'm happy that we could see also that it's not only about money, and the money is a big point and it's very important. But I mean, I'm doing youth policy since many years now, and it's always that you hear from the adults, if I may say, young people only want money, money, money. True. I mean, because we need to survive anyhow as well. But also we spoke about supervision, about mentoring, and about recognition of this as this working experiences. This is not money. These are other topics that are very important also to have a better access for young people into the labor market for a better and smooth transition. So thank you everyone for joining us today, for participating in this event. I think we can see it's really on time and now in July. So I wish you all a great summer and hope to see you again at any other places. Thank you. And thank you online as well.